this is Balcon Lou for Releve Design. Today I'm going to show you how to make a macrame t-shirt throw. I designed a throw for Nate Burgess when he challenged me to accessorize an entire living room with discards. Well, I came to him with a bath mat, and of course a bath mat didn't belong in the living room. So I suggested maybe I could turn it into a throw. I couldn't use the same technique. So early this summer, I had splurged on a high-end throw from a company called Seat. Well, they make these really cool pillows and bedding and throws, and I really like how they end their throws with these widely spaced knots. That same summer, my boyfriend's mother had crocheted a blue striped blanket for me. I thought I could use aspects of both to come up with a really cool textured throw. Here's what you'll need. You'll need to start off with at least one t-shirt. I'm going to use 3 t-shirts because I want to work with the colors. And to make this a true upcycling project, make sure the t-shirts have holes or stains in them so you can't wear them anymore or donate them to charity first. You also need a ruler, something to cut with like scissors or a rotary cutter or an X-Acto knife. Thread and sewing needles are optional. You'll need to decide on your own color palette for the simple stripe pattern we'll be making. You'll also need to determine the width of the throw, because once you start knotting, you'll be able to keep making it as long as you want, but the width is locked in. You won't be able to make it wider. For this demo, I won't be making a full throw, so it won't be that wide. So lay the t-shirt flat on your work surface. And I folded mine in half so I wouldn't have to cut such a long distance. Smooth it out as much as you can, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Line up your ruler as close to the stitches on the bottom hem as possible so that you can maximize the amount of usable material. Cut off the hem and set it aside because we'll be using it later. Cut 1.5-inch wide strips all the way up the shirt till you reach the sleeves. You won't need the remaining upper part of the shirt for the throw, but you can save it for another project. Open a strip and you'll see that it's actually a loop. Stretch the loop to curl the edges in for a finished look. If your loop has graphics on it, it might not curl in, and that's okay, it's still usable. You might have bits of graphics showing through on your knots later though. Now cut the loop to create a strand. I've cut all 3 of my t-shirts and created all the strands I'll need for this demo. I like to lay out the strands in a pattern first, so I can see it and easily make changes if I don't like it. I'm going to put a gray stripe down the middle and 2 different shades of blue on both sides. If you're going to make a symmetrical stripe pattern like mine, make sure the center stripe has an even number of strands. The other stripes can have an odd or even number of strands. Here's the hem that I told you to set aside earlier. Cut the hem loop open. The resulting strand should be at least as long as the width you want the throw to be. If it isn't, then lengthen it by attaching another strip to it with an overhand knot. I'll be showing you an overhand knot next. It's actually the only knot we'll be using in the throw. I'm sure you make overhand knots all the time. Let's do it here. Take one end of the strand and bring it under and back over the hem to make a loop. Then feed the end of the strand through to close the loop. The hem should be passing through this loop we just made. So we just need to pull both ends of the strand to tighten and finish the knot. Now, using the same overhand knot, tie the rest of the strands onto the hem. Go down the line and space the knots evenly on the hem. I like to space mine about 1 inch apart. Now you can do smaller spacing for a tighter throw, or you can do bigger spacing for a throw that's more like a net with big gaps. Of course, a throw with less spacing will be a lot more work to make than a throw of the same size with more spacing between the knots. Let's start knotting. Starting at one end of the throw, grab 2 strands that are next to each other and tie them together with the same overhand knot we've been using. As you tighten the knot, try to position it in relation to the hem using the same spacing between knots that you used earlier. Grasp the next 2 strands and tie those together, again using an overhand knot. I'll go through the overhand knot one more time with the light blue strands next, just in case you can't make out what's happening with these darker ones. Okay, one more time. Make a loop around your hand. Now pass the strands through the loop to close it, and pull the ends to tighten the knot. Remember to mind the distance between the hem and the knot. Tie the rest of the strands until you finish an entire row of knots. Let's start the second row of knots. Starting from one end of the row again, skip the first strand, grasp the second and third strand and tie those together. Space the knot from the previous row using the same spacing between knots that you used earlier. Finish knotting this entire row. When you're done, there will be one untied strand at both ends of this row. Starting from the end of the row again, grasp the first and second strands this time and tie them together. Space the knot from the previous row using the same spacing between knots that you used earlier. Finish knotting this entire row. When you're done, all the strands should be knotted, unlike the previous row where the two end strands weren't knotted. Keep making rows of knots till your throw is long enough for you. Remember, even rows will have lone strands at both ends that aren't knotted, while odd rows will have all strands knotted. I'm going to briefly go over how to make sure your pattern stays consistent as you make your knots. As you tie knots, you have to be careful of which strands you choose to knot together in order to keep your stripes straight. Notice the knots as I trace up the column bordering two different stripes. One knot uses strands of the same color, while the next uses two different ones, and this repeats. Make sure you choose the strands correctly to make this repeating pattern. When your throw is long enough for you, untie it from the hem. To finish the throw, cut the ends of the strands, creating a fringe. Drape this throw anywhere that could use some punchy texture. For more tips and projects, visit relevedesign.com. This is Bao Kong Lu for Releve Design. I hope you join us next time.